Lately, there's been a bunch of stuff surrounding helium that has come out in the news. Today, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of these articles, and I'm going to kind of give my perspective because a few of these actually hit home for me. Right off the bat, let's take a look at the class action lawsuit that has been filed against Helium. So Nova Labs, which used to be Helium, they rebranded. Their legal business name is Nova Labs, and they have a class action lawsuit that was filed against them. And Scott is basically a worldwide attorney that they specialize in these types of cases where they're trying to recoup funds and also they're trying to prosecute. So they kind of handle both sides for the defendants. And this time around, they are going after Nova Labs, and you can see that this lawsuit was published on February 13th, so it was actually last month. And we'll read through this real quick, but essentially what it sums up to is that Nova Labs was essentially selling a device that were pretty much promising that you would recoup your money off of that, and as we know, that hasn't been the case. Was the case for some people, but not everybody, and they continued to sell devices under this premise. So if we take a quick read of the overview of the class action suit, it says Nova Labs, formerly Helium Incorporated, claims to be building the People's Network, which purports to be a global wireless internet connection. Investors were offered the ability to purchase wireless network hotspot devices. These devices were used to create the network itself and provide passive income to purchasers. Basically, you were paid dividends in HNT tokens in exchange for running your portion of the wireless network. In reality, purchasers earned significantly less HNT tokens as dividends, in part because the CEO and other executives secretly allocated themselves a significant portion of the available HNT token distribution. Customers that bought the hotspot devices were never able to recoup the purchase price in the HNT token dividend, and this is the key point, as promised. As a result, investors in Nova Labs are now joining together through a class action suit brought by Scott to seek restitution and damages from Nova Labs and other insiders. If you've purchased a Nova Labs wireless network hotspot device or HNT token and suffered damages, you're encouraged to reach out to Scott to learn more about your legal rights. I'll leave a link to Scott's website. It's basically scott-scott.com. If you want to help them out, if you're interested in being a part of the class action suit, definitely jump over and contact them. I also want to bring up, kind of in correlation to that, an article that Forbes had put out a few months ago. And it basically covers this topic. Crypto darling Helium promised a people's network, instead its executives got rich. Helium was touted as the best real-world use case of Web3 technology, but as it struggles to generate revenue, Forbes' investigation found that executives and their friends quietly hoarded the majority of wealth at the project's inception. And I'm not going to read through the whole article, but I'm just going to highlight some points here. The $1.2 billion Web3 company said it was building the People's Network, a global wireless internet connection for objects like parking meters and dog collars, among many other IoT devices. All Davis had to do was spend $500 on a machine that looked like a Wi-Fi router, plug it into her wall, and receive Helium's cryptocurrency in return, a recurring passive stream of income. One Helium investor claimed that owners could recoup their purchase in just a few weeks. If demand for Helium's system took off, driving up the value of the HNT token, the company implied the network gains would be shared by all. They reference a blog post from 2018 where the Helium CEO wrote that one of the tenets of the Helium network is that it's fair. Everyone has an equal opportunity to mine, keyword being equal. Approximately $500 million were spent on hotspots that people believed would pay steady dividends. But so far, citizens of the People's Network has been vanishingly small crypto rewards. After waiting more than 6 months for her $500 hotspot to arrive at her home in Houston, Davis had mined a single token in 3 months, which at that time was worth about $5. A review of hundreds of leaked internal documents, transaction data, and interviews with 5 former Helium employees suggests that as Helium insiders touted the democratized spirit of the People's Network, they quietly amassed a majority of the tokens earned at the project's start, hoarding much of the wealth generated in its early days and most lucrative days. Forbes identified 30 digital wallets that appeared to be connected to Helium employees, their friends, families, and investors. That group of wallets mined 3.5 million HNT, which was almost half of all tokens mined within the first 3 months of the network's launch back in 2019. Within 6 months, more than a quarter of all HNT was mined by insiders, valued at roughly 250 million when the price of Helium peaked last year. Even after the crypto crash, the tokens are still worth $21 million today. Keep in mind this was a couple months ago when we were still in a significantly down market. That value is a lot higher now. Cryptocurrency companies typically compensate early investors and employees for building their offerings with an allotment of tokens and disclose these rewards in blog posts or white papers. While Helium and its executives have publicly discussed their incentive plan, a scheme called Helium Security Tokens, which guarantees about a third of all HNT for insiders. They haven't previously disclosed the additional windfall taken from the Helium's public token supply, worth millions. This means that at a time when Helium rewards per hotspot were at their highest, insiders claimed a majority of tokens, while little more than 30% went to Helium's community. Each hotspot earned an average of 33,000 HNT in 2019. Today, each hotspot only earns about 2 HNT per month. The next article I'd like to cover is actually Binance delisting HNT. Now, a lot of people are speculating, and this happened today, a lot of people are speculating that this was due to the Solana migration and essentially them shutting down their main chain and moving over to a token on the Solana chain. While that could potentially be true, there's actually now a lawsuit against Nova Labs. And so I expect that it's probably a combination of both. I do not expect HNT to be relisted on Binance US anytime soon. But this isn't the first time that HNT has been removed from Binance. In October of last year, Binance actually, and this is not Binance US, but the global Binance org, actually delisted HNT. And there was a bunch of back and forth between the the COO of Helium, aka Nova Labs, and Binance, in an attempt to get it relisted. And essentially this was their argument. There has been no change to the integrity of HNT and it continues to meet all of the standards of the exchange sets. There are a dozen of other exchanges that continue to support HNT. We hope Binance reverses course and relists the other HNT trading pairs soon. One of the things that Nova Lab needs to understand is the exchange doesn't owe them anything, right? The exchange is a business, and they're solely in the business of providing liquidity and allowing people to buy and sell coins and tokens on their application. At any point, Binance can delist any coin they want, and that's what happened here. They delisted this plus another coin. CoinEx just went through a round of this a week or two ago. They actually went through 2 rounds. They first said that we're going to shut down the US, which is their prerogative, and they also said that, hey, we are now delisting this long list of coins. And as much as you may want to support one of those coins, delisting it does happen. It's part of their business model, and they may be taking that point in time where they're going to onboard new coins. They might just be trying to clean up the coins that are on there. You need to understand, any exchange that is supporting these coins has to run nodes. They have to make sure that their wallets are secure, that the chain is always synced. There is a lot of effort that goes into maintaining these coins on an exchange. And until one of these coins, like HNT, if Nova Labs came to them, said, Binance, we're going to pay for all of your operating costs. Okay, maybe they have, a little bit of leverage. Until they do that, they have zero leverage. And the final topic that I want to talk about, and this one does hit home a little more for me than it will be for anybody else, and that is the impact that this is having on the country of Lebanon. Some of you may not realize, but I actually have family that lives in Beirut, Lebanon. I've been there multiple times, and I know what it's like to be there. I know what the economy is like. It's very wildly different than the U.S. Here, a lot of us complain about power cost. Well, if you've ever been to Lebanon, then you know that, in particular Beirut, that you essentially have power 8 to 12 hours out of a day. At any point, the entire power grid will just shut down until the local government pays the power bill, at which point power will be turned back on for the entire city. Everybody will have power again. Even though you're paying your own personal bill, if the government doesn't pay the bill, basically the entire plant that supplies power gets shut down. It's very political in that country. And one of the things that has happened back in 2021 is there was a mass adoption of crypto within the country of Lebanon. It was awesome to see. There were tons of things over there. We had people, all into crypto on their phones with like the Pi coin, and you had Helium spinning up. And this is the reason I'm bringing up power, is because low power was such a critical infrastructure for that country, because you really can't rely on power. Everybody I know over there has a generator in their home, mainly so that they can turn their AC on just to keep it at a decent temperature in the summer, right? I've been over there in July, in August, and you're looking at over 100 degrees Fahrenheit with no power at times. So let's take a look at this article and see what they're talking about. So Lebanese are starting to disconnect and give up on helium boxes as the cost of keeping them online has become increasingly unsustainable and unprofitable. This is another thing that I want to bring up. In the US, we talk about, how cheap helium miners are to run, and that's because we have cheap power here, right? We have cheap, stable power. They don't over there in Lebanon. So keep that in mind when we're talking about running a 5 to 10 watt device. 5 to 10 watt is significant over there. Lebanon has become a hotbed of crypto adoption and use as the country contends with a collapsed economy and banking system. Another thing I want to bring up, Lebanon, Beirut in particular, is split right down the middle. I'm not going to get into politics, but half the side, it has one belief, the other side has another belief. There's a massive clash between them. There's pretty much a non-stop war going on over there. It's chaos. And so for a lot of that, they need crypto to handle finances. Can't rely on the banking system over there. The last time I was over there, the exchange rate was 7,000 to 1. Meaning 7,000 Lebanese dollars equaled 1 US dollar. Despite the populace's high rate of crypto adoption and use, the Helium network seems to be on its last legs in the country as its promises of profit and utility remain elusive. This next part is so important. The country currently boasts the highest number of Helium hotspots worldwide, with over 6,500 boxes online. The next highest is the UAE, with less than half that number. Lebanon adopted Helium in droves during the 2021 bull run to contend with a crashing economy and a banking system that had pretty much collapsed. At the time, a single HNT token crypto paid out to miners for participating in the network was worth around $50, and people could expect to make around $50 per day from mining HNT. In an economy where the average pay for police and government officials had fallen to $100 from $800, Helium's promise of a steady passive income that was magnitudes higher than the average monthly pay was an enticing opportunity for the Lebanese. Providing coverage with one hotspot was netting them more money than they were making. However, as crypto winter set in and bears took control of markets, the price of the token fell dramatically from its all-time highs in 2021. HNT has lost 90% of its value and is trading at $2.28 as of yesterday. What was once a promise of a $50 per day payout during the 2021 bull run became cents over the ensuing months of 2022 with no recovery in sight. The network has recently come under fire for its tokenomics, and critics claim that the network unfairly benefited insiders who got 25% of the total token supply. Meanwhile, Lebanese told Wired that Helium seems like a scam and its profits only manifested for early adopters. Helium mining is much more complicated than its marketing claimed, with payout determined by various factors, all of which are varying effects on mining prowess of a device. People interviewed by the news outlet said that IP addresses, radio frequencies, and altitudes were some of the things that were impacted the mining payout. Additionally, mining payouts are also affected by the density of the network. Both too few or too many devices in an area affect mining payouts negatively, and Lebanon has the densest network. Sources told Wired that at the height of a Helium adoption, some companies bought hundreds of devices and attempted to set up quote-unquote mining farms. Meanwhile, the reward pot is finite, and as more Helium boxes are deployed, the payouts are spread thinner and thinner. Some people still hope their investments will eventually be recouped, but many are starting to cut their losses and giving up on the network. Helium claimed that its Internet of Things would provide a wide variety of use cases and utility to improve people's daily lives, from delivering food via drones to keeping track of pets. However, 2 years on, the network has barely made any progress toward those goals. And the last bit I want to cover comes from this other article, which was also published yesterday, talking about, HNT, talking about Helium really, basically becoming non-existent in Lebanon. And this is one of the most important parts here. And to really understand this, you have to really be familiar with Lebanon or just the Middle East in general, and kind of understanding, how each country operates, how they're laid out, and, what their day-to-day lives are. It's wildly different than over here in the US. Helium's promise to become the backbone network for smart devices and delivery of breakfast burritos by drone has little to do with its appeal in Lebanon. Lebanese citizens, many of them struggling as the country's economy tanked, simply saw the financial yield from the network's hotspots as an easy way to make hard currency. But as the value of HNT tokens has fallen, many people have seen their funds depleted and are stuck holding onto a sleek but pretty useless piece of hardware. In the headquarters of God of Mining, a mining pool on the outskirts of Beirut, and I've actually seen this place. It is really cool, and it's something that you wouldn't expect to see in Lebanon, but it is there. It's a really neat setup. But essentially what they did is they just disconnected 30 hotspots that they had running. In 2018, 18% of Lebanese households earned less than $400 per month. Just 3 years later, that figure stood at 92%. So in 2021, 92% of the households, not individuals, full households earned less than $400 per month. Hyperinflation ravaged the Lebanese lira, which is basically their equivalent of the US dollar, destroying over 95% of its value. The banks imposed capital controls, leaving clients to watch their life savings evaporate as the lira spiraled. The state tripled and withdrew from most people's lives. Traffic lights stopped working, making every junction on Lebanon's already dicey roads a hair-raising dash. If you've ever driven in Lebanon, it is chaos to begin with. And typically, if you have a 3-lane road, you have 5 cars wide. Just picture that in your mind. Several roundabouts, and just chaos in general when the light system works. Nobody monitors the lights anyways, and it is just chaos in general. Moving on, and this is what I mentioned earlier, The national grid delivered at best 1 hour of power per day. The value of police and military monthly salaries fell from $800 to less than $100. And that's per month, guys. Many stopped turning up to work as petrol, or as we know over here, gasoline, they used to get there cost more than they had earned. In Lebanon, any opportunity people see to keep on living, they take it. And this is the mentality over there, right? You just drive on. You do whatever you have to do to survive. For the longest time, it has been a war zone over there, right? And so the people already have that mentality that I just need to survive another day. I just need to survive. And then when the banks collapsed, they kind of held on to this potential with helium being low power. It was kind of the only type of really quote-unquote mining that they could do during the bull run. And unfortunately, it all fell apart. The promise of a machine that could be plugged in to generate more revenue than most people in the country could earn was irresistible. Many people took what money they could scrape together and paid the highly elevated black market prices for hotspots. Demand for hotspots in Lebanon surged as it did globally, and the subsequent order backlog meant that some Lebanese customers had to wait up to a year to receive their machines. Secondhand hotspots, or those that are entertaining importers, had managed to bring in early, sold for several times their value. One of his clients was so desperate to get one, she paid $6,000 for a hotspot from someone who had simply bought a few in Europe and brought them back in their luggage. So imagine that. You had people that were willing to pay $6,000 for a hotspot over there. Where here we were complaining because they were selling for $700, $800 on eBay. And you may ask yourself, well, why didn't they just buy it off eBay and import it? Let's talk about the next part. Around the end of 2021, Lebanese customs started to block the importation of hotspots, citing vague concerns about military radio frequencies. The Minister of Telecommunications did not respond to requests for comment. However, an engineer in the ministry who wished to remain anonymous, as they were not authorized to speak to the media, says that helium hotspots were banned until frequency usage conditions were assessed. This did little to stop importation and simply made hotspots more expensive. One importer who wished to remain anonymous told Wire, "We get our machines through customs using other channels. Those other channels tended to be expensive." So essentially you get into a position where you're smuggling in devices. If we hop over to Explorer and we take a look at Beirut, look at this. This is insane. You'd never see this in the US, right? Look at this. There are barely any non-filled hexes. And if we zoom into these, look at some of these. So we've got 15 hotspots in this hex. And this is essentially all of Beirut here, right? So this is downtown Beirut, right on the Mediterranean. And it's just crazy to see how many hexes you see filled. This is how big it was in Lebanon.